Hi, this is Tavis Piatoli, sports dietitian with the company My Sports Dietitian. And welcome to Section 8 on our topic of the 80-20 rule of nutrition, balanced eating. First of all, what is the 80-20 rule? Many of you guys may have seen this before. We see this in a lot of different practices. It's not just nutrition. It's known as the Pareto's principle. Really, for many type of events, roughly 80% of the effects come from 20% of the cases. And I'll use an example outside of this. Really, if we look in healthcare, I worked for a company for 13 years, a hospital system. I was in the fitness industry. And when we looked at our medical insurance premiums, 80% of the costs were coming from 20% of the individuals because we had 20% of our employee base were sick. So we're going to really talk about how do we apply this to nutrition and how does this work for wrestlers? How can they use this same principle when it comes to applying to their nutrition for their athletic performance? So what's the purpose of the 80-20 rule? Now, when we're looking at nutrition, this is really focused strictly on the nutrition side. This is to help athletes understand they don't have to give up foods they enjoy. There are too many programs out there that really restrict you from eating certain things, whether that is, people are claiming on a paleo type diet you can't eat starch, or on a certain type of fasting diet you can't eat certain foods, or you're gluten free, whatever that may be. If an athlete enjoys certain things, sometimes people give up chocolate for a certain time. And I think that's not a good mindset to have because it increases the desire to want to eat those foods especially during a time of restriction. So if you're doing it for a week, probably not a big deal. If you're doing it for longer term, it becomes more challenging. This really helps people focused on nutritional balance. We have to realize we're always on a diet. You never go on one and you never get off one. And those that do fail because they eliminate foods. So, and when we do that, we also have that mindset again of restriction. So we want to avoid restriction. Restriction leads to cutting calories so severely that it puts you in a very severe caloric deficit that could lead to negative impacts on athletic performance. I understand the nature of wrestling and the culture of wrestling when it comes to cutting weight. Clint has talked about, how to do that safely. And there's ways to do that, especially in the off season leading up to where you don't have to do that all in 1 week. There's no such thing as a perfect diet. And we want to make sure the diet, when we're in the mindset of nutrition, it's based on stability. We have to find things that are stable, things that are sustainable. There's no such thing as this is the ideal diet for every single person because that doesn't work. Also, 80% of sometimes the excess calories that we consume will come from 20% of the foods we eat. So we might be over-consuming a certain amount of calories, but that's a small percentage of food that's causing that. At the end of the day, it's everything we eat that adds up. But if we really want to watch certain things, and we'll show you that in one of the last slides, on how to maybe make some substitutions in your diet to improve the quality, we can do that. And really, that kind of leads to this last bullet point. Just making one nutritional change in habits can result in a significant change in body weight, body composition, and performance goals. So how do we view the 80-20 rule? 80% quality nutrition. So if you go back to those last three topics we discussed on carbohydrate, fat, and protein, in those I discussed, hey, these are state championship carbs, state championship protein, state championship fats. That's what's going to fall into those lines. Those are the foods you want to eat 80% of the time. As you can see here, these are foods like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean protein, lean dairy products, low-fat dairy products. These are foods that are going to provide consistent energy, muscle recovery, focus, and help with athletic performance, but also help you recover and feel better because they have high nutritional value and they're nutrient dense. At the same time, you may look at this and go, why are you putting pictures of these types of foods? When we're dealing with high school to collegiate athletes, 14, 13, all the way up to, 21, 22-year-old athletes, these are foods that are going to be in their diet. In some cases, there are some athletes that do a great job and they choose not to eat these foods, but that's a very small percentage. And at the same time, I want at least the athletes I work with to know, hey, if you like these foods, they can fit in your diet. They can't be 50% or 80% of your diet because you're going to struggle and it's going to be really hard to make the weight that you're trying to wrestle at. But at the same time, we find ways to do that. So again, we look at that same chart that we gave you guys on carbs, fat, and protein. And those are going to be the miss the playoff nutrients or miss the playoff carbs, fat, and protein. Things that we don't want to eat too often, but they can be about 20% of our diet. If we go a little bit less, that's even better. But somewhere in the 10 to 20% range is fine. All right, so how do we do that? How do we apply the 80-20% rule to my weekly eating habits? Well, let's just say an athlete eats, and this is ideal, 6 meals a day or even snacks. Anytime they eat anything, whether it's a snack or a meal, we just call that a meal. So that would be 42 meals a week. If they eat 5 meals, that's 35 meals a week. 80% of that would be about 34 meals, okay? The other 20% of that would be your choice meals. Now you're like, well, how do we divide that up? Do I just save all those meals and put them in a bank? No. What you don't want to do is you don't want to save all those meals just to have one big cheat day like on a Sunday. I don't believe in 6 days of really watching what you eat and having good quality foods and having a good balanced diet. And then all of a sudden, we can sabotage that by just eating poorly all throughout the day. I would rather see you take those 7 meals and break them up, one choice per day. Now, it's not going overboard to where we overconsume because in a sport like wrestling, we're trying to manage our weight, and especially if you consume too much sodium and too many calories, that could really set you back if you have a weight to meet for that specific weekend match or tournament. So we also want to keep our cheat meals within our calorie goals. We don't want to go overboard with our calories. So if you want to have a slice of pizza or 2 instead of 4 slices of pizza, that will be just fine. If you wanted to have a hamburger, that's just fine. And we'll show you some strategies on how to do that next and how you can combine some of these foods to make that still just with a balanced meal. You can still incorporate them. But like I said, an entire cheat day, and people, there's so many different phrases and education that's being given, and I think a lot of it's pretty poor. It's, eat whatever you want all day on a Sunday. And I just think that's bad advice because we don't get the results that way, and I've never seen anyone get results doing it that way. All right, so here's some ways we can implement this. How do we implement some of these your choice foods and not sabotage our goals? Number one, if we like sugar, like I love chocolate. I have a 5-year-old daughter who wants to eat ice cream every day, and we incorporate ice cream in our diet. It's not going to be something that we give up. At the same time, if you're an athlete and you're saying, wait, where would be the best place for me to have Skittles or, maybe candy or a donut? Believe it or not, the best place to have sugar is going to be after a hard training session. So your gas tank's empty, your muscles are depleted. So some sugar combined with protein, believe it or not, the research shows those fast-acting sugars facilitate recovery, creates a big spike in insulin. When you have protein combined to that, it shuttles that protein into the muscle tissue, and that carbohydrate from that simple sugar gets into your gas tank, which is your liver and your muscle, and facilitates the recovery process. So you instantly start feeling better because your blood sugar is starting to stabilize and come back up. But again, you want to balance that out with a normal balanced meal. After you consume this, you don't want to always eat a big sugar meal. But if there's a place where you need to have it, it's after exercise. Also, we can incorporate some of these foods that we would consider maybe not the most nutritionally balanced foods into a meal. So, I'm from the New Orleans and Louisiana area. We have a lot of fried seafood here, shrimp, catfish, seafood platters, and all over the world they have those types of foods. But particularly here, it's like, hey, if I want some fried catfish, I'm not going to get fried French fries and fried hush puppies. That's just a lot of fried food, a lot of oil, a lot of omega-6 oil, which causes inflammation, which we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks. At the same time, I would say, all right, I might get some fried catfish tonight, and I'm going to mix that with vegetables. Or if it's after a workout, maybe I'll have a baked potato and some vegetables with it. So we can surround it with other nutritionally sound foods. Instead of hamburgers, fries, and a soda, maybe you can get a hamburger, a salad, or a baked potato instead of the fries and get water to hydrate with. Or it's grilled chicken and fries and vegetables instead of fried chicken and fries. So think about how can I just make my meal a little bit better? And that's a couple of ways that you guys can do that just by changing out those foods and making some substitutions with some more nutritionally sound foods. All right. Finally, what I want to talk about is just kind of eat this instead of that. I'm using a few examples. We can probably have 500 slides that kind of show you different foods, but I wanted to keep this simple. And some foods that I commonly see athletes eat. Let's just say Pop-Tarts. Pop-Tarts are pretty not so nutritionally sound food for breakfast, but it's consumed a lot because it's easy. I can put sugary cereal in the same place. We can say Pop-Tarts or sugary cereal. And instead of that, I would say, okay, if you want something sweet, maybe have 2 whole grain waffles with peanut butter and honey. So you can get Kashi whole grain waffles, even Eggo makes some whole grain waffles. Throw a little bit of peanut butter, drizzle a little honey on there. You got yourself a nice, nutritionally balanced sound that's got protein, carbs, some fat, a little bit of, I would do local honey or raw honey. That would be better than the processed honey instead of just all processed sugar. So those Pop-Tarts, those sugary cereal, that'll make you hungry within an hour or two, where the whole grain waffles, peanut butter, and honey, you'll have more blood sugar stability, more energy, more focus. And again, you can see down the line, instead of donuts, maybe it's a small bagel with peanut butter and jelly. Maybe instead of sports drinks or regular soda, especially when you're not training with the sports drink, let's try to find some water. Maybe it's club soda, or maybe it's some type of 0-calorie beverage. There's 0-calorie sports drinks. That's important if you're especially trying to manage your weight, because we don't want to be packing in a ton of calories from fluids unless you're trying to gain weight. Regular potato chips, there's baked chips that'll cut your calories by about 80 to 100 calories. Again, French fries or sweet potato fries, let's go maybe baked or sweet potato. I know initially that's sometimes tough to make those challenges or those changes, but trust me, it really works out very big in the end when it comes to athletic performance and how you feel. And again, you can see some of the others. One of my favorites here is, instead of a frozen coffee, instead of like a Frappuccino or one of these blended drinks that you get from coffee shops that can range from as low as maybe 300 calories all the way up to 1,200 calories, go home and make a homemade smoothie. Protein powder, and we've showed you guys some of those recipes, but protein powder, milk, some fruit, maybe a little peanut butter or some nuts in there, and you got yourself a nice, and even if you want to put some hot coffee, you can make your own Frappuccino using hot coffee, or even an iced coffee mix, and just adding milk and protein powder. You can make it just taste just as good. So these are some examples on how to make some substitutions just to make your diet. Again, it's all about making it just a little bit better. It's not this drastic overhaul that's going to make you feel like you're restricting foods. All right, as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Send me emails. I'll always enjoy getting feedback and emails from you guys. tpatoli@mysportsd.com. Next topic, best practices in hydration for peak performance. And always check out mywrestlingnutrition.com. Clint Wattenberg's ebook is amazing. Check it out. We get nothing but rave reviews from coaches and athletes that say, hey, man, this is one of the most coolest things that I've ever picked up, because it's got so much incredible information. It's not like a 10-page guide. It's a lot of information. But I tell you what, if you're a coach and you're working with wrestlers, if you're a wrestler, it doesn't matter. It's going to give you so much great information on what you can do from a nutritional standpoint to improve your performance in health. And check us out at mysportsdconnect.com. A lot of great information, podcasts, webinars, ebooks, a lot of great information for you guys to help improve your health and nutrition. So as always, looking forward to seeing you guys in the next topic. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.